I'm Kelsey Litchfield, and this is the Field Advisor Podcast, where I talk with local experts to unpack the latest agronomy information and research, giving you the knowledge to make informed decisions out in the field. Welcome back to Field Advisor Podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey Litchfield, and today we start a mini-series introducing our Illinois Soy Envoys of the Year. So if you're not familiar with the Soy Envoy program, they're like a group of ambassadors that are stationed throughout the state of Illinois, from north to south, central. These are people that are boots on the ground, that are out in the world. They will be writing content for Field Advisor on the podcast. They'll be doing crop reports. So I thought, why not introduce them to you so you can have a better understanding of who they are? So today we have Byron Hendrix. Byron's probably the closest soy envoy to me. You're just northeast of me a little bit, out of Kewanee, Illinois. Byron, just give us a quick who you are and what you do for a living.
Yeah, Byron Hendrix, currently live in Kewanee, Illinois, via Southern Illinois. Grew up in St. Clair County, Freeburg High School graduate. Worked for my stepdad at Terrain Ag Specialties, so very Southern Illinois boy from the start. Got up to Kewanee, Henry County in 2003, actually. Moved the family up here, raised the family up here. They're all 22, 20, and 15 right now.
Was that for a job that you moved?
Yeah, went into ag retail at first, and from there went into basic manufacturer rep, and then on to agronomy, seed. Ended up the last 7 years or so in the adjuvant side of the business, whether that's tank mix adjuvants for farmers or helping in-can pesticides work better with adjuvants. So that's the last 7 years, but I've been a CCA since 2003, and pretty much try to keep up with that as much as possible. Different things. Just utilize the MOU for the USDA and the American Society of Agronomy, and was just listed as a TSP on the registry just this week. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. I really want to quickly, you have, reading your bio, which we're currently uploading to the Field Advisor website. If it's not already uploaded, you can go to Field Advisor and to participate, go to Soy Envoys and go read. But I thought where you got your start in ag, you mentioned your stepdad. Talk about sparking that interest in agriculture. What do you remember the moment where you thought, oh, I want to have a career here and go after that?
Yeah, I think when we moved out to the country in 2000, sorry, not 2000, I'm way past that. That's my kids' generation. When I was growing up, it was probably mid-90s, moved out to the country, and got involved with mowing lawns, especially our lawn on a 40/20 tractor. Learned to mow on that thing. Pretty awesome experience. I didn't know what a PTO shaft was whatsoever. So being from the city, of course, moving to the country around 8th grade, learned a lot about this. Turned 16, learned to drive on a Jeep that my dad scouted on, crop fields down there. Was just hooked by it quickly. Got out of high school, worked for him one summer. He changed my direction of my career quickly. I was going to be a marketing teacher, history, that type of thing. I love history, but got involved with ag quickly, and it went from there. So I would say around that mid-90s to late 90s, I really got hooked on ag as a later teen, I would say.
Why did they decide to move the country? Did your stepdad, did he come from a farm, or what spurred that change?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so my mom and stepdad were married in between my 7th and 8th grade year. And we moved from Belleville, which is a very city environment in St. Clair County, out to Smithton, into rural Smithton. And it got him closer to work out in Washington County, real close, there to Oakville, Nashville area. And I think we were on 6 or 7 acres out in Smithton. So really introduced me to more living rural, smaller school environment, and we just went from there. And my brothers all worked as well behind me at the retail store there, and we all started there. It's amazing.
Where did you end up going to school and then into your career?
Yeah, I mentioned that I was in the history side
Right.
for a while, so I went to Monmouth College.
Oh,
I
yeah.
ran cross country in the fall of '95. Stayed at Monmouth College for a couple years, and then switched my major to ag in Western Illinois. Took all of my Monmouth College credits, so that was where I ended up at Western. Did an ag business degree there.
Nice.
And from there went down to Southern Illinois from there due to our agronomy professor at that time knew of another agronomy weed scientist that just started in Carbondale named Brian Young. And I was the third graduate student, I believe, on staff with Brian in 2000 to 2002.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk quickly about your expertise. How did when Soy Envoys applied to be a part of this program, we asked them, "What's your expertise?" And you said weed resistant adjuvants, like you said earlier, integrated pest management, plant health, fertility. Out of all of those, which one are you really passionate about?
My most passion starts from weed identification, how to kill that weed specifically. We were still on the edge of the Roundup Ready era really taking off. So it was a lot of tank mixes that had to take out different grasses, different broadleaves. So I became an expert fairly quickly on how to make these mixes to keep the crop safe as well as kill those weeds. And guess what? We're right back to that again 25 years later or so, because there's a lot of different tank mixes today that we have to establish to kill these weeds.
Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little further. What are you seeing with weed control, weed management? I mean, we're seeing the resistance. ISA, Illinois Soybean, does fund some weed management projects, but we also understand there's more integrated management that are non-chemical options. What's that's a broad question, but I'm just curious, what are you telling people in your crop consulting business when it comes to weed management? Where are you guiding them?
Yeah. Right now, what's really intriguing from the weed resistance standpoint is, obviously we have pesticides, we have herbicides that we can utilize. We have to change the modes of action up. A lot of times we can use pre-emergence herbicides, soil applied, at a full rate, and we can prevent a lot of these resistant weeds from coming up, hopefully with a good crop canopy later on, with a little bit of luck and moisture and Mother Nature helping out. But honestly, because resistance is becoming such an issue, we've seen things like cover crops come in,
Mm-hmm.
and cover crops has really helped tremendously at outcompeting these weed resistant weeds like Palmer amaranth, common water hemp, those type of weeds. Just they outcompete them, and then we kill that successfully, the cover crop off, and we have a very clean looking field. So that's a great tool that's come about, and we're getting better at it. That's the key, right? I think you probably remember years ago when we started this cover crop thing that we didn't know exactly, okay, if it's weed resistance, are we utilizing it for more of a nitrogen, in the soil, that type of thing. But we've got multiple great things happening with cover crops, and more people are actually, implementing those practices, which is great to see.
Are you hearing of anybody using weed zappers or things like that? Or it's not common, but I think people are maybe thinking about it a little bit more.
Yeah, not my area. That's one of those that I'd pull over in the truck really quick if I saw something different like that and have a few questions. But not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's an interesting idea, interesting tool. I don't know too much about it, but I mean, it's a real problem, the resistance, herbicide resistance, and I think they're, like you said, with the cover crops, more tools in the toolbox to see what works for that field. And I think coming back to what you said earlier, identifying those weeds, I think it is sort of the key to how you control that, because not every weed's the same.
Right. And another key thing is the height of those weeds, right? If we're fortunate enough to get in the field with conditions are favorable, and we've got those weeds under 4 inches tall, most of those we can take care of really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's when Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, we can't get in there. The weeds are growing quickly. It's warmer out. Soil temperatures are higher. We're seeing, you could see inch by inch growth with weeds like Palmer amaranth during the early summer. But getting the key just early, get them early. Are you going to have to do 2 passes sometimes because the weeds, grasses, broadleaves, they all establish themselves different. Larger seed broadleaves, small seed broadleaves. You definitely have to watch out for that, because you can have a flush of weeds come in, kill those, great, and then all of a sudden have another flush of a different species, or maybe a weed resistant species for that matter. So we're seeing more of that, more flushes, and more common to take more post emergence runs through the field.
You mentioned Palmer amaranth. I feel like that's not being brought up as much, or is it just other topics have come to light? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think when I discuss Palmer amaranth, I usually clump it in with just Amaranthus species in general. So when we're looking at water hemp, we're looking at pigweed, we're looking at Palmer amaranth. They're all, in that clump of really resistant species. They can mutate. They can congregate together. They're hard to identify. Very. They look like each other. Common tall water hemp, redwood pigweed, smooth pigweed. There's just lots of them. But Palmer's kind of gone that way. I personally, water hemp is my main target, my main species. From the, I guess around 2012 to 2014 or so and beyond, we started seeing some major water hemp issues in the field due to certain practices, agronomic practices.
Are we still seeing it in the fields, or not so much anymore?
Yeah, you still see them. Actually, it was kind of funny. I predicted when I was working down there with my dad, 2014, 15 summers, we had some major issues of controlling water hemp in the field. And I called it, J hooking, where you'd have a root that just looked like a J, and it would go laterally. You'd pull that thing out, and you're like, well, no wonder why the herbicide's not working. It can't get through the whole plant. You might burn the leaves, but you don't kill the plant. And I said, man, we're going to see this move north in the state of Illinois within the next 5 years or more. And sure enough, we do see those issues with certain tillage practices where we can't control larger water hemp because the root systems are so large and they're growing, completely laterally through the soil profile. And it takes, I think I backed up 2 or 3 steps one time pulling some of these weeds. Mare's tail will do it too. That's another great example of a weed that can get, hooked out, or as a tillage process moves through and the roots start growing, left to right laterally. And it's just hard to kill those weeds when that happens.
What's the worst case of weed control you've seen? You don't have to get specifics, but I'm curious how that was handled, and what's a good takeaway for farmers from that situation.
Yeah, I've got a lot of pictures in my iCloud from 10 years ago, 12 years ago, of these water hemp fields, and they they're complete disasters because the water hemp takes over and you can't even see the soybeans anymore. So fields like that really speak high to me as far as how can we take this next year and prevent this, because it's a start all over. You have to start all over in that case.
What did that look like? Just completely plowing it over,
Yeah.
or what was that?
Yeah, it was a complete water hemp takeover of a soybean field where you could not see the soybeans in the field anymore. So much water hemp, can't possibly kill the water hemp at all. It was
Was that
one of those things
was that
where
because of the resistance?
resistance and just too big, really too big. I think water hemp resistance has been around, documented for quite a while, but it just got really large. And when you have a resistant one as well, that gets big, you're just not going to kill it without, either burning that off or plowing it under. And if it's already making seeds, plowing it under is doing no good either. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's several fields like that in Southern Illinois that I can distinctly remember that were disasters and got over that hump. And now we're hopefully back on the right track.
Yeah, you said 10 to 12 years ago you were seeing that. So not so much anymore. You mentioned other tools. Are those really helping now to control that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that have come along. Resistance management by soil applied herbicides. We do a lot more soil applied herbicides today. A lot more 2-pass programs in those no-till, minimum till systems. That's really helped out. My message would just be utilize the full labeled rate of those soil applied systems to suppress or control those small seeded broadleaves, and they can't compete once that crop gets up and gets a good canopy to it.
So turning to soybeans, this is another question we like to ask on the application about your soybean management philosophy. And I imagine it has a lot to do with weed control. So you can talk about that. But I also want to tell people, this program, we understand we're looking to share soybean information, soybean agronomy, things like that. But we understand there's a systems approach too. Like you have your corn, if you're in wheat and doing double crop, that comes into play too. But we like to focus on soybean management. So what would you say is your philosophy there that you'd like to share with people?
Yes, soybean management in general. There used to be this quote, it's probably still out there: when's the best time to plant soybeans? When you're planting corn. That's become pretty popular. Just yesterday, I saw 2 no-till soybean planters going in Henry County here, just south of Cambridge and central and western Henry County. But, planting beans earlier has gotten really popular. Utilize that sunlight, that maximum daytime. We've seen a lot of those in planting studies this past 3 years or so. So I think that's number one key. A fresh start with the herbicides, get the soil applied herbicide down as close to planting as possible. That's another key. And hopefully Mother Nature with rainfall will activate those herbicides over time. And then help you establish a good canopy as we go.
I keep thinking this, and I'm just going to share it, but everyone says early soybean planting. I'm like, can we still call it early soybean planting? People are just planting soybeans in April now. Like, it's not as unusual as it once been. And I hear a lot more people saying, okay, what do you consider early anymore? And I think that's probably March now, thinking about it.
I think you're spot on. I think once the spring turns from winter to spring, and you get to that late March time frame, you get the day changes. You start adding daylight quickly. I think that's a great comment there. That mid March is probably not great, but I think that 20th to 25th time frame is about right for soybeans. It's an amazing plant. They can go through a lot, especially with the seed treatments we have today. It's pretty awesome. We can hopefully get away from the frost line. That's the key thing, right? Watching the frost, those late frosts.
I just did see on my weather app this morning there's a frost warning. I think that's supposed to come in tonight into tomorrow. But I don't see any beans out in the ground. The ground, when I took the soil temp this past Saturday in our no-till field, was about 45 to 47 degrees. So I guess we'll just wait and see.
Yep. Sounds right.
Um, Byron, one thing that you did talk about when we had our training a couple weeks ago was the advocacy you do on the CCA front. Talk a little bit about that and um, why being a CCA is important, especially to our farmer audience who maybe doesn't understand the CCA designation. Not to say that they don't understand what they do, but why is it important for them to work with the CCA?
Yeah, I think, the last 10 years, especially, and maybe the last 5 years, there's social media has just really brought a lot more light to a lot more situations happening in ag in general. Um, so I think from a CCA standpoint and agronomy in general, there's just a lot coming to the forefront now, whether that's cover cropping, um, soybean management, as we just discussed. Lots of things happening on corn. Could be genetics. I mean, anything agronomic is key there. But since there's such a large network and a lot more shareability today throughout the whole country and the world, for that matter, via social media, on like California has been working, right? They have specific people that work, um, CCAs and what is it, pest control. They've got specific people that have to write plans, and I'd like to get to that point to where you realize you're working with a professional that has been trained to do this, that goes every year through credits and keeps up their education. It's kind of like going from a bachelor's to a master's to a doctorate, but it's over time. Um, but yeah, and we've added sustainability, we've added weed resistance, we've added several categories that a CCA can actually specialize in, and I think that's getting more popular as well. Like cover crops, for example, we're gonna I see expanding that, and I did mention that the government, USDA, NRCS has, you know, seen that we've got these professionals out here, right, as trained crop advisors that have a big background in agronomy, wherever they were trained, right? Whether that's called the School of Hard Knocks, and just over time, and you're really good at what you do because you've seen a lot, or you've got a PhD. It doesn't matter. Anybody's got the capability to go take that exam to show their knowledge. And last October, we were able to get this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. That's a long one to say there, with the USDA. And CCAs have 38 particular categories, that non-engineering categories, we'll call them, that they can be technical service providers in. And it's a super easy process. The American Society of Agronomy takes care of all of that paperwork for you. Pretty much, it's a pretty seamless transaction, and you just have to do a 3.5, 4 hour introduction training through the NRCS, and you become a technical service provider to do these things
And
through your local county.
what is a TSP if people are not aware?
Yeah, TSPs are technical service providers. They sign off on nutrient management planning, pest management planning. They could be an engineer. As I said, NRCS, USDA has engineers on staff for waterway construction and lots of different things that have engineers. But from the non-engineering standpoint, a technical service provider can actually sign off on EQIP dollars that are going to, you put in for EQIP, for pest management or nutrient management, could be manure management, all of those things. And, if I could really see something, I'd love to see 10% of CCAs become TSPs. That would add a lot. I think my nearest numbers this morning, where we have 297 nationwide that can do NRCS 590 plans, and we have 115 TSPs nationwide that can do pest management 595 plans. In Illinois, we have 9 for pest management, only 9 as of today. And then we have 23 that can do 590, which is a nutrient management. So very interesting there. I'd like to get the word out more, advocate more for this, so we can get more people working with our government agencies to help farmers out.
I was going to say, how does that lay out how that helps the farmer? So if a CCA is a TSP, and if for those, sorry if you acronym, Certified Crop Advisor, if you did not know that, I'm trying to show the benefit to farmers. So maybe also showing as an example why it's good to work with a CCA, because maybe you'll get more done in that time, or if you're looking to be a program. If you get what I'm saying, I'm trying to show them what the benefit is of doing that.
Yeah, I think we've got CCAs across the state that are farmers, retailers. They're in extension and education, but I think the farmer has a good access to a CCA that can become a TSP fairly quickly. And that's the avocation part of it. It's that I'm trying to really get CCAs to know that they can do this process, because you could go to your local retailer and you have a CCA you work with. They could be a TSP and they're already working with the USDA office, right? Farmers go into USDA, they do a lot of paperwork. And if they're looking for someone that can do a comprehensive nutrient management plan or nutrient management plan, pest management plan, and they put in for these dollars, and they're going to get these dollars. They get, let's say they're getting, let's say $5,000 for doing certain plans, IPM, integrated pest management, buffering, buffer strips, a lot of different things. That's the overall goal of working with TSPs, to increase the amount of TSPs, because we can get this done faster for them. Before, you probably had to wait in line, I'm guessing. There was only, one USDA employee in 3 counties that could really work with you on these plans. Now we're going to have a whole bunch more. That's the goal. Let's 10x this. Let's get a lot of TSPs going, help out the USDA.
And the TSP is directly correlated with the NRCS?
Yeah, USDA NRCS.
Okay.
Yeah, program, technical service provider. Yeah. And it's an easy process. I mean, the Certified Crop Advisor can go right on their account and just apply and click the button, and that's pretty much it. It's a very easy process.
Seems like to me it's a good way to maybe get more business if you're a CCA. If by adding this designation, that offers a whole new service to get with farmers who are trying to get some of these programs. I mean, I won't talk about what's currently going on in the federal government. I know there's a lot going on with programs, funding that's not being there. I just saw something yesterday about Climate Smart. I mean, there's a lot of volatility there, I'll just say. So maybe there's some apprehension about doing some of that, but I think having a resource that can tell you what is going on, such as a CCA who's also technical service provider, would help.
Absolutely would help. I think some good examples of that would be if you're interested in the See and Spray technology, right? That those dollars can go toward those things, because that's a pest management practice, right? Where we're using less pesticide going across the field. We're spraying, weeds. It's targeting weeds specifically. That's a good example. Drift control adjuvants that help, pesticides stay on target on the field. That's great as well. So there's a lot of different technologies. You mentioned the electrocution or those type of systems, all of those things, hooded sprayers. If a farmer gets into this plan, they can get the dollars for those particular technologies, which is great. And that's what we're pushing for to get to the 2025 Farm Bill, is to include as much of these things as possible, that TSPs can, we can expand this program. We can help get more funding. We can get these really awesome technologies on the farm and get dollars for them.
So to make sure I'm understanding this right, if a farmer were to work with the TSP like you said, the See and Spray technology that is becoming a more popular topic and maybe practice, could they get funding to help pay for a sprayer? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's actually wording in the 595 today for up-to-date equipment and technology, such as See and Spray and precision spraying systems. So it's already included in there. Could be nozzles, could be a pulse width modulation nozzles from Case IH tractors use pulse width modulation. Any technology that can help keep pesticides where they're supposed to be. So that's already in there.
Yeah. Something, if you're a farmer out there, definitely to ask if you work with a certified crop advisor, to ask them more about that for sure. Okay. I want to shift slightly, Byron, and get some career advice in that field. So I always like to ask people, looking back on your career, whether it's been long or short, in ag, what advice were you given that stands out the most?
I was a pretty active kid and very ADHD, lots of energy, just all that. It took a while to slow down. And I think some of the best advice I've ever had is 80% listening, 20% talking. Just take everything in, really, then you can visualize it, see it, think it out, and be, more practical and get that time to think before you answer. So that's probably the best advice I've had in my career to get better at communication, managing something, whether it's officiating sports. I do 3 high school sports in the state of Illinois, and that's really helped me.
I think you're a saint for doing that. Nowadays.
Yeah, it's been 18, 19 years now, I think.
Yeah. I was asked to be an umpire for a softball game. I used to play softball. I was in t-ball all the way through senior in high school. I played softball, and they asked me if I would umpire a game, and I said, okay. It was like I'd get $40, and I hated it. Hated it. Like, the other team's coach was getting so mad at me because he thought I was playing favorites. And I really wish I would have asked to just be out in the field. Like, I can see if someone's out or safe better than probably I could evaluate balls or strikes.
Balls or strikes. Yep. Yeah, that's fun. That's funny.
So mad respect to anyone that does that, because you got to deal with people. And I think it's getting worse, some of the parents.
It's interesting because officials come from all walks of life, right? I've officiated with farmers, physicians, attorneys, 18-year-olds. It's everybody. And like you said, God bless them for doing it, because we need them and all that. But it really has helped me in my career as well. Managing players, coaches, the game itself, the rules. You also do a lot of listening when you're officiating. So it's pretty cool.
To go on that, a lot of people tell me, well, communicating's talking. I said, no, communication's actually, like you said, you have to listen first and then think about what you're going to say. One of my mentors, she has a listening test, and she even says, she goes, I fail at one of these aspects all the time. She goes, it's very hard to be a good listener and to be engaged in a conversation and not try to think about what you're going to say or interrupt someone or, things like that. It's truly a skill to be a good listener.
Yeah. One of the other great things, great speakers, this is another awesome thing is tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. If you do those 3 things through your presentation, whether it's 15 minutes long or an hour, you're going to walk out of there, well known, lots more questions, more engaged, those type of things. So the 3 T's. Yep.
Good. Another question. What's something you've learned from a farmer that you still use today or still practice today?
It's a good question. I go back to probably the really early days. Um, Speaking of weed ID, right? We get back to weed ID back before Roundup. We had we call it uh, little grass, inch grass, and big grass, and this is back in the accent days where we would have to spray different rates of accent to control larger grass or smaller grass, and it got really expensive too.
Yeah, I bet.
So farmers got to know their grass ID pretty quick. But again, it's you know that was an interesting way to stage grass, not by how a ruler or whatever was. Yeah, this is little grass, this is inch grass, and this is big grass. And big grass was really expensive to control. Not as much of a problem with glyphosate these days, but it can no doubt come in handy for water hemp. So maybe looking at a different analogy for a water hemp plant that's less than 4 inches, find some kind of way to figure out what to call that. Kill it, and it's probably economical. If it gets bigger than that, now we're in trouble.
A good visual for sure. Byron, I like to ask this question because I'm more of a tech person. I'm always looking for something that I can have on my phone, like an app. So is there an app or piece of tech that you rely on daily that you'd recommend to others? So for example, I tell everyone about Radar Scope, which is an app, a radar app when I learned from Eric Snodgrass when I took the severe weather class at University of Illinois. So that's kind of like mine. Do you have something you'd share?
My go-to app is probably on the weather side as well because we're always using it, right? I do like Radar Scope, My Radar. Those are good ones. Um, you know, I just weather's in our everyday life, so those are good ones. What's really interesting is I'm trying to figure out how to go to an app that has most everything I want to know when I'm in the field, right? Kind of like a Purdue Agronomy guide in your back pocket that we used to carry and we still carry, that you could just go right away and it's right there on your phone. There's probably some apps out there. I haven't done a lot of looking at agronomic apps, but I would love something like that that had just an all-inclusive, here's a label, or here's the nitrogen rate, recommendation, or P and K, those type of things at your fingertips would be great.
They're trying to get AI to do that, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah,
that's for sure. It's a lot of products. Yeah,
I keep seeing that. Will AI take over like an agronomist role at CCA? And I don't believe so, because I think there's always a benefit in having human relationships, because they can actually go to your field. AI cannot, unless I guess you take a photo or something. But it's just, you can't rely on just one tool. I mean, we've said for years, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So, utilize those different tools.
Yeah, it might be not an all-inclusive one, but something specific. If you need an AI and a common name, a trade name, what groups of herbicide is it in, what's it kill, the mode of action, all that stuff, and it's a database of everything. That'd be a cool app to have.
Yeah,
I know you have to kind of search around and whatever, but it gives you the options. What are my options? And that'd be really neat to have. So kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, you heard it here first, or if someone's out there, let us know.
Good app developer.
Byron, I'm wondering if I already know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway, because you've mentioned side jobs. If you weren't in your current job, what do you think you'd be doing? Would you be refereeing full time, or would you be a history teacher?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd probably, at this point in my career, probably teaching, because I've had enough experience with officiating and coaching. And we mentioned just slowing down things, right? And just listening, being an active listener. I could see myself doing that now than way before 20 years ago or 30 years ago, for sure. Absolutely. Officiating full time is a tough gig. To make good money at it, you got to move your way up to the Division I college ranks or pro, and that's perfectly doable.
Ooh.
It takes a lot of practice.
For sure.
But yeah.
Unless you're the Big Ten refs that I yell at an Illinois game. You know who you are out there. I doubt they're not listening to this podcast. I know that, but boy, I could go off on a tangent with that. Okay, Byron, my last question for you is, what do you wish someone would have told you before going into this industry or just before going into this job?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Things go in cycles. History can repeat itself. If we work 40 years or more, we probably see some things over and over again, right? I had the opportunity to go do a PhD when I was 22, 23 years old. When I look back on it, sometimes I wish I would have taken that opportunity to do that, because I look at today and there's a lot of competition out there, and there's people that have done their PhDs that are really good at what they do, and you're probably glad you're in that position today. If you're looking for a role or whatever, there's a lot of versatility, and you can do a lot of things with that. So looking back, that would have been something I would have liked to have done. But anything's always possible, right?
Anything else, Byron? That was great advice. Certainly, I want to leave you the last word. Anything we didn't cover or anything you want to leave our farmer audience with?
Yeah, I just think, in this fast-paced world out there, we're getting in the fields. We're doing a lot of work out there, a lot of planting. Just be careful. Be careful of your surroundings. Look all ways. It's a dangerous world out there. Very dangerous occupation, and they have to worry about distractions away from their job as well on the outside, being on a roadway or whatever, or people may not like what they're doing, those type of things. But just be safe out there. That's number one. Get home every day to your family and enjoy it.
Yeah, have some fun. Be safe, but have some fun too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's a lot going on in the world with tariffs, commodity prices, a lot of stress out there. But if you can find something you enjoy, I know something I enjoy is just getting into the combine each fall and just having peace and quiet, just out there cutting soybeans. I don't know what it is about it, but it makes me feel at peace, even though there could be chaos going on. So just find something that you enjoy.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Byron, thank you for joining us. Byron will be sharing his knowledge, his expertise on the Field Advisor blog all growing seasons. So make sure you follow Field Advisor. You can subscribe by going to our website. You can follow on all the social media platforms. I encourage you, because I have a feeling he's going to be sharing some really good knowledge and something that maybe you hadn't thought about before on the blog. So thanks, Byron.
Thank you, Kelsey. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to the Field Advisor podcast. Unbiased, independent agronomy information to keep your farm moving forward. I'm Kelsey Litchfield, your voice from the field. This podcast is funded by the Illinois Soybean Association Checkoff Program. Stay connected with Field Advisor on social media. Follow, like, and share to keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe to the Field Advisor podcast on your favorite podcast platform.